Namaskar. I'm Assistant Professor Kritika Dev from LG School of Law, and welcome to the part 2 of exclusion of oral by documentary evidence. I always feel that you, before coming to especially the part 2 lectures, you have seen the part 1. Otherwise, it will become very, very difficult to connect with the session. Right, so I, with the same belief, I feel that you have gone through the part 1 and now you're sitting for the part 2. So let's continue with the session. Okay, so here is the section. In the previous section, I hope you remember, we dealt with section 91 and 92. And in today's session, we'll deal with the remaining sections. Right? So here is section 93. Now let's see what section 93 says. When the language used in a document is on its face ambiguous or defective. Right? Evidence may not be given of facts which would show its meaning or supply its defect. Now here, when it comes to any document, the language is ambiguous. Here you can see the very example. In the document itself, it is written that A agrees to sell house to B for rupees 5,000 or rupees 10,000. Now you can see there is a huge difference. There is no clarity as to this is a very important element. This is the consideration. Right. Now the consideration itself is not proper. It is either 5,000 or 10,000. Now the whole document becomes ambiguous when it comes to the numbers, when it comes to the consideration from the side of the other party. Now when such ambiguous and defective language is used in the document, then the evidence may not be given. Right? The evidence may not be given in such circumstances. I hope with the example, section 93 is very clear to understand. When the language is very ambiguous on the face of it, nothing something that you're getting to see when you read the document. It is on its face very ambiguous. Then the evidence may not be given. It should not be given to the court in order to make it understand. Document should be made again, right? In order to make that very important thing, and that is only ambiguous, how that document can be accepted. Right? Okay, let's move on to section 94, the next section. The next section says, when language used in a document is plain itself. Right? When the language, in the previous one we had seen that when the language is ambiguous. So ambiguous, evidence may not be given. Now when the language is so plain, as it is easily understandable when you see the contract or when you see the document, why will the court allow you to give any evidence related to it? So here, let's see a very simple example which I've stated here, that A agrees to sell his house situated at Delhi to B for rupees, I guess that is 1 lakh rupees. Right? So if A agrees to sell the house, it is very clear they are talking about a house. This situation, the place where it is situated, it has also been mentioned very clearly that it is situated in Delhi and it has been given to be for rupees 1 lakh rupees. Now there is nothing of, it is so plain to understand. So in such situation, the court will not allow you to give any evidence. Why? Because the document itself is very plain to understand. What can be given here? Right? So evidence may not be given in such situations. With this, let's read section 95. What section 95 says? Section 95 states, when language used in a document is plain itself, but is unmeaning in reference to existing facts, evidence may be given to show that it was used in a peculiar sense. Now, what will happen under this very section? Now, let's get this very section with the help of the example. First, say A says that he executed a deed and in which he gives a house which is situated in Calcutta to B. Right? He gives any house, Calcutta, Delhi, first say Calcutta, right, to B, and B is in possession. Now, the document is very plain, but when it comes to the actual execution, the court gets to know that A has no house in Calcutta. And A has first say A has no house in Calcutta, and of course B is in a possession of the house, but that house is situated in Delhi. So though the language used is very simple here, the language is simply that A has a house in Calcutta of which B is in possession. But here, after when the process went, of course, the document was stating like that, but in reality, there was no house in Calcutta. There was a house in Delhi of which B was in possession. So here, of course, as the language is very simple, but it is unmeaning to the existing fact. The parties themselves are saying, sir, we do have a house, but that is not in Calcutta. It is there in Delhi. So then the court will allow the party to give evidence related to it, because the present document becomes it is of no meaning, because it is not actually coming up with the intention of the parties. Right? Okay. With this, let's move on to section 96. Now, what section 96 says? When the facts are such that the language used might have been meant to apply to anyone and could have been meant to apply to more than one of several persons or things, evidence may be given of facts which show which of those persons or thing it was actually intended to apply to. Now here again, let's take a very simple example. First, say A has two horses, right? A has two horses of black color, or A has two buffaloes of black color. So here A contracted with B to give his one buffalo in rupees 50,000. But of course, when it comes to one black buffalo, it applies to two because he has two buffaloes. So here evidence could be given in order to make it understand that out of those two, on whom does that apply? People have affection with the animals they even have. So they may come up with the evidence that it applied to this buffalo and not onto that buffalo, because by default the contract is getting applied to any of those two. But here the evidence will be acceptable. The parties may give the evidence in order to prove that out of those two buffaloes, which one of those were the subject of the contract, right? So that is about section 96. Let's move on to the next section, that is section 97. 97 says when the language used applies partly to one set existing facts and partly to another set of existing facts, but the whole of it does not apply correctly to either. Now, evidence may be given to show to which of the two it was meant to apply. Now, here let's take the same example. First, say here there were two parties. Now, let's take the example. First, say A agrees to sell a land, right? And A agrees to sell that land, which is situated in, according to him, which is situated in Delhi, and right now, which is under the occupancy of B, right? A is ready to sell the land which is situated at Delhi in the occupancy of Y. Now, this is the fact. Now, when we see the reality, what is happening? That, of course, A has a land. A has a land at Delhi, but that is not in the occupancy of Y. And the land which is there in the occupancy of Y is situated in Rajasthan. Contradicting. The fact is not actually applying on any of the facts, half fact is applying on one fact and the half on the other. You're getting my point. Here A sells the property to anybody where it is situated in Delhi and which is in the occupancy of Y, right? But when it comes to the reality, of course, Y is having the occupancy of A's property, but that property is not there in Delhi, it is there in Rajasthan. And the property he is mentioning, it is there in Delhi, but it is not in the occupancy of Y. Now here half facts are applying on one, half on the other. So when the facts are of such a nature where the half of the fact is applying on one situation and half of the fact is applying on the other situation, then evidence can be given related to the same. That is all about section 97. Now let's quickly see what section 98 tries to say. Now, evidence as to meaning of commonly intangible characters or of foreign obsolete, technical, local or provincial expressions, or of abbreviations and of words used in a peculiar sense. Now, if a word is being used in a peculiar sense, now what is that peculiar sense? Evidence could be given in order to make the court understand that the word under this contract was written with that meaning. As I've mentioned the example, first say there is a sculpture. He has modes. The word used in the contract is modes. Now, modes can be of models or modes could be used for the modeling tools. Now, here evidence could be given in order to actually state what mode stands for. Here, mode stands for models or modeling tools, right? So here in such situations where it is used as an abbreviation or as any of the things which are mentioned under section 98, then evidence can be given for the same, right? So this is all about the part 2 of exclusion of oral through the documentary evidence, and I hope with this you have understood the complete concept. And as I always say, keep revising. Evidence is a subject which needs so much of revision, so kindly revise it. Till then, keep studying, and thank you so much.